Okay, so the 7 major fluids that you need to keep your car running are oil, radiator fluid, transmission fluid, power steering fluid, brake fluid, air conditioning coolant, and washer fluid. So the first step in checking your oil is to check this dipstick right here. And so what you do is you pull it out, and on the end there will be some little notches that will show you the oil level. And in this specific car, the oil needs to be changed so it doesn't reach the notches. At most dealers that change oil, they'll typically tell you the suggested mileage when you should change the oil, which is typically 3,000 to 5,000 miles, or a suggested date. But some cars have their own oil sensors and will tell you when to change the oil, and it may be earlier or later, depending on the car. Some people prefer to get their oil changed at professional places like garages or dealerships, but there's also a way to do it yourself. And so what you would do is, under the car, you would take out the oil pan and drain the oil, and you would replace the oil filter, then plug in the oil pan, and then you'd come back up to this right here, and you'd replace the oil there. So radiator fluid is meant to run through the engine to cool it down, and it's connected to a thermostat that regulates the temperature. And you don't typically need to refill or change radiator fluid unless it's leaking, which is a problem in itself. And so where you would check it is right here, and there's a line right here that tells you where the gauge should be at. And typically you don't need to mess with it until 100,000 miles, as long as it's not leaking. So transmission fluid acts as a lubricant for all of the moving parts in transmission. And in automatic transmission, it also acts as a coolant. And so to check the transmission fluid, you need to come to this dipstick right here, and you flip this and pull it out. And to check this fluid, you need to have the car idling in park. So I can't check it right now, but there is a mark for when it's cold and when it's hot. So power steering fluid assists and eases steering, and that's found right here. And you would refill that when it gets low, and it makes it easier to steer rather than a manual. So brake fluid is a hydraulic fluid used to transfer force into pressure and to amplify braking force. And so it feeds in right here on this brake line back there, and it transfers to the caliper right here, which squeezes the disc brakes. So this is where the brake fluid is stored, and there's a minimum and a maximum line, and you can see this is where the brake fluid is currently. So it's above the minimum, but it's pretty close, and you would just refill that when it gets low. So air conditioning fluid is a coolant that's used to distribute the cold created by the air conditioner. And this is the canister where the air conditioning fluid is stored. And it's a refrigerator fluid that distributes the cold. So windshield wiper fluid is pretty self-explanatory. It's found right here. And so some cars will have a little flashing light that will tell you when it's close to being empty, but otherwise you can just test it out, and if it doesn't come out, that means it's probably empty, and you would just refill it right here.